Good for
All
you.
right. Well, everybody, thank you for joining us for tonight's program, a discussion of Ball of Fire from 1941. And before we get started, it's always great to have Darnice with us. Darnice, thanks
Oh,
again for joining us. And a special welcome to anyone joining us tonight for the first time. And I think we got several people that are new for the first time tonight. So just out of curiosity, how many people this week or whenever you saw Ball of Fire are seeing it for the first time?
really?
Wow, a lot
Wow.
of people. All right. Okay, very, very good. All right, so let's get into Ball of Fire with Gary Cooper and Miss Barbara Stanwyck. And as many of you are probably familiar with the term screwball comedy, and Ball of Fire is one of the last screwball comedies of the classic Hollywood era, I want to talk about that genre or that subgenre for just a moment. So screwball comedies had their heyday in the early 30s to the early 40s, and they were kind of variations of the romantic comedy, turning the traditional love story on its head by having the female lead dominating the male lead, a man who is typically of questionable masculinity, we may say. It satirizes love and it adds farce, rapid fire dialogue, and sometimes disguise. You always see, or you typically you see social classes in conflict in screwball comedy, and we've looked at a couple already in this program. We looked at The Miracle of Morgan's Creek and His Girl Friday. And other famous screwball comedies include It Happened One Night, My Man Godfrey, The Awful Truth, Bringing Up Baby, and The Lady Eve, which also stars Barbara Stanwyck. You still see screwball comedies from time to time creeping up, not so often. I think my favorite modern day screwball is What's Up, Doc from
Mm.
1972. That one's a lot of fun. So the director of tonight's movie, Howard Hawks, he enjoyed an incredible career making films in many different styles and genres: comedy, drama, gangster, film noir, westerns, you name it. Some of the films that he's responsible for include Bringing Up Baby, Only Angels Have Wings, His Girl Friday, Sergeant York, The Big Sleep, Red River, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, Rio Bravo, and tons of others. He was a very prolific director. Now, Hawks had a particular passion for airplanes, but he also loved cars and motorcycles. In fact, he and Barbara Stanwyck enjoyed riding motorcycles together. His films often focus on male bonding, which is evidenced in a weird sort of way in tonight's film. Hawks also liked to explore the concept of the incompatibility of men and women, which is something that we see in tonight's movie and in another Hawks film we saw last year, His Girl Friday. Maybe Hawks was onto something with the male-female incompatibility thing since he married 3 times. So this film has an incredible supporting cast. So many of these actors playing the professors, you've probably seen them in other films, which we'll get to later. But the people behind the camera are even more impressive. So let's just take a look at some of the names here. I mean, it's almost like looking at the Hollywood Hall of Fame.
Mhm.
You've got producer Samuel Goldwyn, who had produced over 100 movies at this point. You've got an Oscar-nominated story by Thomas Monroe and Billy Wilder, whom I'll have more to say about in just a moment. You've got music by the 9-time Oscar winner, Alfred Newman, an Oscar-winning cinematographer, Greg Toland, 3-time Oscar winner, editor Daniel Mandel, and 8-time Oscar winner for costumes, Edith Head. There's your dream team right there.
Right.
It just doesn't get much better than that. So there's so much story behind this film, and I'm going to try to give you the shortest version I can. Now, Samuel Goldwyn, like I said, he'd been producing movies for a long time, and he had Gary Cooper under contract, but he was upset because he was having more success with Gary Cooper loaning him out to other studios. So Goldwyn obtained 2 writers who were absolutely dynamite at the time, Billy Wilder and Charles Brackett. He got them on loan from Paramount and had them write something for Cooper, which would become Ball of Fire. Now, Paramount didn't really want to loan these writers out, but they did want Cooper to star in For Whom the Bell Tolls. So they gave into it. Now, everybody thought having Cooper play a linguistics professor was a great idea. Everybody except for Cooper, who took one look at the script and said, I can never memorize all this gibberish. Plus, Cooper was not the type of actor who was used to delivering rapid fire dialogue, but he came through. Now, for Billy Wilder, who co-wrote the story and the screenplay, being on the set of Ball of Fire was really his equivalent of going to film school. Like so many screenwriters at that time, Wilder was really, really tired of having his scripts changed or often butchered by directors. So he wanted to start learning how to direct his own work. And a lot of what he learned by observing Howard Hawks directing this film. In fact, Wilder was able to direct his first movie, The Major and the Minor, starring Ray Milland and Ginger Rogers, just months after Ball of Fire. Now, I could spend all night talking about Barbara Stanwyck. I think she is probably my favorite actress of all time.
Wow.
And like Hawks, she could do anything: comedy, drama, film noir, westerns, anything. Now, for many years, she was the highest paid woman, not only in Hollywood, but in America. I can't think of another actress who made as many films as she did, 85 in total, and was great in every single one of them. Even though not all of those films were good, she was always good in them. Now, I wanted to show you this 1,000 plus page biography of Barbara Stanwyck, which is called A Life of Barbara Stanwyck, True Steel by Victoria Wilson. Yeah, there's 1,000 pages right there. So you can get this through Marina, but understand that the biography only goes to 1940. Stanwyck's career continued for another 40 years. Now the author is working on the next volume, which will probably be another 1,000 pager. And it's deservedly so, because it's really hard for us to imagine how powerful Stanwyck was as a Hollywood presence and as an actress in her time. Later, of course, she moved on to television in the late 50s, her most popular show being The Big Valley from 1965 to 69, for which she won an Emmy Award. Now, astonishingly, despite 4 Oscar nominations, including one for tonight's film, Stanwyck never won an Academy Award except for an honorary Oscar in 1982. One of the biggest Hollywood crimes of all time, in my opinion. So now it might surprise you that for the role of Sugar Puss O'Shea, Stanwyck was nowhere near the first choice. Some of the people that were ahead of her: Carol Lombard, Jean Arthur, Lucille Ball, Betty Field, Virginia Gilmore, and Ginger Rogers. Now, any of those actresses could have worked out just fine, some better than others, but Stanwyck got the job mainly because she was suggested by Gary Cooper, who had starred with her in Meet John Doe 6 months earlier. Now, this was also the first time Stanwyck met Billy Wilder, which led to her starring in Double Indemnity. So there's lots of connections going on here. Stanwyck totally owns this movie. And soon after this, she was able to make just about any movie she wanted in Hollywood. So this was really the tipping point for her. She was already established, but things just really soared for her after this. So Ball of Fire is loosely based on Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, although we have 8 here. Now, as to the professors, it's a huge understatement to say these guys don't get out very much. But they're working hard on this encyclopedia, so when Bertram Potts, Gary Cooper, becomes inspired by the local garbage man, played by Alan Jenkins, we're off to the races. So again, we have so many interesting actors and character actors to discuss in this film, but let's get started with your initial thoughts. What did you think?
Anyone? Hand up? Sue? Uh-oh.
All right, I'm getting it. Okay. Well, I want to say I just thought it was hysterical. I loved every minute of it. It was so clever. The dialogue, the wit was unbelievable. I love Krupa, so that was
Yeah.
cool.
That was cool.
And some of the slang was a bit over my head, but I got a lot of it. But all of the interplay, all the different the names of the characters, everything was designed to be hilarious, and yet they pulled it off. And I really love the Seven Dwarfs. I will agree with you, Andy, about Barbara Stanwyck. She was outstanding, but those Seven Dwarfs really made it.
They were excellent.
Yeah.
Chuck, go ahead. And then Bill B.
Yeah, I totally agree. I loved it too. And like you, Andy, Barbara Stanwyck is my favorite actress as well of all time, or actor of all time, man or woman. She's just great in this movie. The way she delivers her lines is great. I love the character actors like Cuddles Sakal in this, and he's really terrific, and all the professors are really wonderful. And also Dan Duryea, an early role for him as Pastrami, which would kind of foreshadow some of his film noir roles he would star in later on. And of course, Dana Andrews as well. Yeah, Dana Andrews was also a film noir actor too. So I loved everything about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. I'm glad you brought that up about Dan Duryea, because he is a huge figure in film noir, as is Dana Andrews. But we just see little bits of flashes of his nastiness in this film. Yeah, great.
Bill B. And then Ethan.
Yeah, I agree with all of the above. I knew a little bit less about this film than a lot of other Hawks films going into it, and it's as everyone has pointed out, it's really quite delightful. I think for me, maybe it got a little bit lost. 1941 was such a strong year. I didn't even realize that it was up for 3 or 4 Oscars, including one for Stanwick as Best Actress and Best Story. And I thought the screenplay is really excellent, and it gave somebody like a Billy Wilder and Charles Brackett a chance to really play with the language and how much fun they had with all the slang stuff. And some of it was really very clever. I was kind of sorry that they explained the Amici reference, because I thought that was great right off the bat. Oh, Don Amici, of course, he was in Alexander Graham Bell. So, and they did a lot of that sort of thing. And as you say, the cast is amazing. They've got all of the great character actors of MGM at the time that you've seen in a million other things, even in these really minor roles like Elisha Cook Jr. It's like he just had a bit part.
That's right.
He was just like in the nightclub, but all of these great character actors, Oscar Homolka and Cuddles Sakal and all those people. I thought the chemistry between Stanwyck and Cooper really worked. I did remember reading something about Cooper being a little overwhelmed by all of the dialogue in it, but it actually, the way he played it, it came off really well, because he was supposed to be kind of so caught up in the moment of all this 9 years of encyclopedic research and everything, that the moment he would get around a woman, for example, he would be kind of tongue-tied. So it kind of fit the character, I thought. And so, as Sue said earlier, seeing Gene Krupa in a movie was great. Like probably the premier drummer of the time. And it was a really interesting little side bit they did with the matchbook thing with the boogie number. That was just a really nice touch. So for me, it was a really pleasant surprise. I wasn't that familiar with the movie, but I thought it was really excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Ethan?
I know why it's not a thing anymore now or within the last half century, but it's movies like this that really, really make me appreciate that Academy Award for Best Story being separate from Best Screenplay.
Yeah.
The story of this really, really showed me how different a story is from a screenplay and how important the story is. So I I was completely blown away by the story. I knew very little about it going in. Anyway, the stuff that other people have been saying specifically about the professors, they're absolutely right. I loved any second that they were on screen, every single one of them. But what was interesting is that you weren't really able to tell them apart instantly, but you kind of didn't have to, because the way that their lines are written, the way that they delivered their lines, within like the first 3 words, you obviously knew which dwarf that was, whether it was happy or sleepy, and you obviously knew that that was the professor of geography or the professor of
Math.
I really, really appreciated that attention to the characters. That I don't know how you could do that intentionally, but I think they did and it worked. And the last thing that I specifically want to mention is that this movie has a lot of just fantastic scenes. Like Bill said with the drummer, that guy was like years and years ahead of his time. I love that. But what completely just made this perfect for me was the 10-minute long sequence towards the end where they're all in the study and the 2 guys have got them at gunpoint and they're trying to get that painting to drop, and it takes 10 minutes for it to drop, and I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. It's just all the tension in it was absolutely perfect.
Certainly was. Certainly was.
Yeah.
Bruce, did you want to go?
One thing that
And then Debbie.
when I saw the professors, it's almost as if there was one character called the professors, these 8 individuals, because they often moved in a block. They spoke in a block. They all were slight facets of the same gem. You know, it was very, very well written. I had a little Gilmore Girls flashback with a lot of the dialogue, the snappy dialogue going back and forth. I wonder if this is a touchstone for a lot of writers now, this movie and other such movies. But I liked it.
Good.
Thanks. Okay, Debbie, and then Jan.
I was just going to say, I was blown away from the opening credits. I mean, when I saw the opening credits and who was involved in making this movie, I was just like, because I've never seen this. I've never seen this movie before. So I was just like, wow. And then I started seeing these people appearing and it was like, oh my God, look at him. Oh my God. Dana Andrews. Yeah, just one after another. And the other thing I was going to say was, that I love Barbara Stanwyck more than I can say. I just love her. I've always loved her. And I think she is truly one of the greatest actors ever. And finally, any movie in which smart guys, men use their smartness to beat people with guns gets my vote. I love
Exactly,
that.
Debbie. Exactly.
I thought that was awesome.
It was.
Thanks. Jan.
Well, I agree with all of the above. The professors were wonderful, and one of them was, I looked it up afterwards, was the bartender in Casablanca.
Yeah, Sasha.
I didn't immediately recognize him because they had aged him a bit, but you know, when you looked at, and of course some of the others too, the angel in It's a Wonderful Life. But I think, having said that, it's her movie. I mean, she commanded every scene. And one thing I'd like to make note of was her costuming. That was some really top-notch fashion. Now, I know it was 41, and it's sort of that early 40s bent to it, but some of the outfits, when she came down the first morning in a white blouse and black skirt and a belt, pretty contemporary. And I was, you know, fixated on seeing what the next outfit was going to be. I thought that was really a particular note, and it really stood out, especially with all the guys and the kind of frumpy housekeeper. And there's Barbara in these jazzy outfits. I thought was great. The only thing
Yeah.
I'd like to say, oh, I'm sorry. I
No,
didn't-
no, I was just saying, yeah.
The reason why I love classic movies, and in particular this type of movie, this was perfect for me this week. Kind of tired of tired of winter, tired of the lockdown, tired of it all, and then to have this screwball comedy and the smart guys outwitting the thugs, it was perfect. I loved it. I had
Great.
seen it before, but I think, rewatching it a little bit closer this week was just what I needed. So
Yeah, well, that's great.
I have to agree with Jan.
Yeah,
I've seen
yeah.
this movie before, but I grew up watching Danny Kaye movies. And so the Howard Hawks remake, Billy Wilder remake of this as a musical with Danny Kaye and Virginia Mayo was my first introduction to this. And when I found out it was a remake, then I went to watch the original and loved both of them. I mean, I really think that the thing, but you were talking about the costuming. I mean, it's Edith Head. And
Yeah.
it has to be stunning because it's everything she touched was gold. So yeah, the wedding scene, that dress that she had in the wedding scene, I wanted that dress. It was just gorgeous.
Yeah. Jan, also Stanwick, after this, every movie that she signed up for, she asked, is Edith Head the costumer for this movie? If not, can we get her? and in most cases, Stanwick got her wish.
well, it really worked. I mean, from the nightclub outfit with the sequins and the swirls. So yeah, you expect that's going to be kind of jazzy. What was it? Drum boogie?
Drum boogie.
Yeah. But it was the other ones that really got me. Really elegant. She looked fabulous. And so it was great.
Okay, next, Sue.
I did want to go back to the professors because as I was watching it, and I've been involved in plays and I watched actors that it hit me. These guys are all working together. It's an ensemble and they are all nailing it. And the strength of them as character actors is coming out, which is they aren't the stars. They're making it work. And it was fabulous. It was a fantastic piece of ensemble acting. So I just wanted to point that out.
I agree.
I agree, definitely. Go ahead, Bill. And then Marie.
So this had the potential to be such an awful movie. All the characters are stereotyped. And if you were to tell me, just describe the movie to me and tell me what they were trying to do, I would say this is going to be an awful movie. But the actors and the script was so good and so clever that it never hit the depths that it could have. In fact, it rose way above it. Just a very well done, taking an interesting but not really unique concept and really delivering, because the actors and the script, the way the words.
Lost you.
No, it looks like he was,
Like he dropped off.
finished.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think there was a lag, so he's probably done. Marie?
All right, so I might be risking getting thrown out of the session, but
Never.
We won't throw you out. We won't throw you
I
out.
don't like Barbara Stanwyck.
Oh.
I know it seems like a terrible thing to say out loud, but all right, so let me tell you the reason why. When I was a little girl, I was at just the right age to watch Big Valley reruns every day after school. Every day. And I was so in love with Heath Barkley, like the Lee Majors. It was
Lee Majors, yeah.
and I don't know, Richard Long and these other. They were, to me, the stars of the show. And I could not understand why at the end they said starring, they went through the list of cast and featuring Barbara Stanwyck. And she was older, she had gray hair, and she was only on certain episodes. She wasn't even always there. And my mother had to explain to me that she was really quite a movie star. So I have to tell you, I really enjoyed the movie. I loved it, and seeing it now. But I spent the majority of my life I just sort of resented her, but accept her in this role, and it was it was a wonderful movie. So thanks.
Well, Marie, I'm glad you had a conversion experience, and we are glad to welcome you into the fold. But no, we would never throw you off. Not for anything.
Well, and to be fair, she said she loved the movie. She still didn't say that she came away
That's right.
with an appreciation of
That's
Barbara
right.
Stanwyck. Which, if my first introduction to Barbara Stanwyck was the Thornbirds. So,
Yeah.
She played the evil very well.
So now, we've talked about the professors a little bit, and I'm going to see who knows. Here's a trivia question for you. Gary Cooper is supposed to be the youngest character of the professors, but he was not the youngest actor of the professors. Does anybody know who was?
Was it now I can't think of his name, the guy who played Max in Sound of Music? Hayden?
It was.
I'm sorry, I didn't reach it.
That's okay. It was Richard Hayden. Now Cooper was 40 when this was filmed, and Hayden was 36. Now he played Oddly, which he does not look like a 36-year-old professor. He looks like the oldest guy. But I just thought that was really, really interesting. Cooper wasn't even the second youngest. Let's see, Leonid Kinsky was Quintana, the philosophy professor, was 38. So the magic of movies.
Very nice. Very nice.
Okay, I think Ronald's got.
Yeah, okay, Ronald's got hand up.
Yeah, I love the movie also, but this film appears as a major critical issue for feminists who introduced the idea of the male gaze. The argument is that most movies made in Hollywood have been directed by men, written by men, probably for men, for the male gaze, meaning that the male gaze authorizes the legitimacy of the woman's body. The two other women in this film are totally rejected as objects of desire. They're totally shunned. The one that runs the thing, who has all the money, she likes Cooper, but she's not visually presented as an object of desire, like Barbara Stanwyck. Barbara Stanwyck has that body, the glamour, the sensuality, the sexuality that makes him need to wet his hair, the back of his head. So it's really done in a way that sort of subordinates women who don't fit into that mold as secondary characters. And it's all based on the male gaze. The film opens up with her doing a performance that is all meant to attract male attention. And all these men are vying for her. The other two women, nobody cares about. The housekeeper is presented as a prude, a sort of a villain in a way, sort of trying to stop this act of desire going on between Cooper and Stanwyck. And the other one is a sort of pathetic character. She has all the money, but yet she's very subordinate. She plays a very secondary role. So I was wondering about your feelings about the position of the woman in this movie from a more modernist kind of feminist perspective, which most films sort of kind of lean into doing. The woman is always presented as the object of male desire. Mm-hmm. Men can do things by themselves without needing women. A lot of war movies are like that, but women always presented. Woman is always presented in the context of men and how men desire them, and how men want them. Their outfitting, their costuming, their passion, their desire, their looks, all are geared to attract men. And the premise behind that was that most of the audience members are male, and the woman is experiencing this as looking at a man's desire for another woman.
Definitely.
But the woman is being asked to identify with the male gaze as the male gaze looks at the object of desire.
Yeah,
this is
Ronald,
brilliantly done in Vertigo.
Yeah. Very, very, very good insight.
Yeah, Ronald, you bring some really good points up. And like you said, most films, almost all films, were directed by men, written by men, produced by men. Now, what's interesting is later on, and I think we have a couple of these films coming up, perhaps, you're going to see what became to be known as women's pictures. And those were still directed by men, but they had more of a story for women. In fact, one such one that comes to mind is another Stanwick film called No Man of Her Own, which is sympathizing with the woman. I mean, you still have Barbara Stanwyck, still a beautiful woman, but you're going to start to see themes, movies that are more female centric. A Letter to Three Wives is another one that you see. That is definitely a problem in this period in Hollywood, and it didn't end there, unfortunately. We still have that problem today. Thankfully, we have more women directors, more women writers than we had back then by a long shot. It's still not where it needs to be. The balance is still too far to the male side, and we still tend to get that male point of view. And that desire that you were mentioning, that is definitely something that we're still struggling with. But let me hear from some other people on this topic.
Anyone? Chuck? And then Jan?
Ronald actually mentioned the character of Miss Totten, which actually I kind of liked her character. I liked that in the beginning. You could tell that she was, the way she was acting with her, how she was smitten with Gary Cooper, and he's not really saying anything that's really that suave, but she's smitten by his looks because he looks like Gary Cooper, of course. And I think she's kind of like, a kind of a repressed character, kind of like the professors are. And I like by the end of the film, she's shown like kind of riding on the garbage truck at the end. And I thought that was a nice little thing that she kind of let go of her, like maybe her apprehensions or repressions a little bit. She obviously didn't end up with Gary Cooper in the end, but I thought that was a nice little progression for her character.
Yeah, I agree. Jan?
It's a very valid point. And I think when I first got on, somebody was mentioning about TCM. They're doing an overview now of looking at some of the classical films in new light. I know I caught the opening of Gone with the Wind. Obviously, it has to be re-looked at, but do you get rid of the film because it isn't an accurate representation of what was slavery in the US? So I agree, Ronald, it's a very valid point. Nobody's more cognizant of me. However, in today's world, the screwball comedy was perfect for this week. So I think I'm able to separate the genres out, and I can view a film from the 40s and not go there. Would it be made today? No. And there would be other things addressed. At a TCM festival, I went to see How to Marry a Millionaire. And that was brought up too, that in light of Me Too and all, I go, oh, let's get over it. Let's just enjoy the film for what it is. I'm not downplaying all the other aspects of it. I think what I'm saying is enjoy the film for what it is at that time. I do think some films, and I thought they addressed it very well on TCM last night, address Gone with the Wind, and here's some of the issues you should be thinking while you're observing it. I think that's good, but Lord knows, don't get rid of that film. Don't get rid of Ball of Fire either because of the issues.
That's all they did. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
Sue, then Jim. Oh, unmute.
Okay, so I thought there was somebody before me. Well, I agree. And I thought a little bit about it, but I think that the character Barbara Stanwyck played controlled the whole scene. And so she used feminine wiles. Well, that was what she had to do at that time. I mean, let's not deny history but she was in charge. And so I thought she had an awful, in some ways, even though people had guns and words, she had a lot of power too, but she may have played it up, but she was making sure that she controlled the issue. So she had choice whether she would marry or not marry him. So anyway, in Gone with the Wind, I thought the star was Clark Gable anyway. So I, I might be a reverse chauvinist or something. That's all.
Thanks, Sue. Okay, Jim,
Okay, let me see there.
you
Yeah.
are good, yeah.
Yes, good. Yeah, I tended to watch the film with some of the ideas that Sue just mentioned too about, oh, this is the way it was at the time, but she really played it well. But other thing I noticed through there is that they were really pushing the limits of the production code at the time too, that with unrolling the stocking and all the kisses that didn't quite kiss and everything. Yeah, so.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Jim.
Good point.
And a well-timed observation for Women's History Month too.
Yeah.
I think we really do need to look at a lot of these films, not even from the women's perspective, but even from, the racial perspective.
Yeah.
I read a thing where, the one Black trumpet player in Gene Krupa's band had a solo, and in some theaters they actually cut that scene out so that they started when she started singing, and they did some of the trumpets, but they left that trumpet solo out so they could play it in certain theaters. So the times, they are what they were, and you do have to kind of take it, but considering also maybe the sensibilities of Howard Hawks, even though he liked these strong women. I mean, gentlemen prefer blondes. It's all about the sex and what the women can do to manipulate the man. So it's a two-way street, but it's definitely a timely piece. I mean, there's a lot of movies that could never be made now. Mel Brooks probably could make all of his movies right now, right? It's just a different sensibility now and a different awareness. But thank God we have that, right?
Yeah.
So.
And again, everybody's bringing up some really good points, Jan, and especially with the TCM thing going on, which I would love to see. I don't have cable or TCM, so I can't see it. But and that's the thing too. I mean, what we need to do is we need to watch these films. We need to discuss these problems. We need to say that these things were wrong then and they're wrong now. And let's learn from what we see in these movies, and not destroy them, not put them in the ground. I mean, Gone with the Wind is a great film. Does it have problems? Yes, it does. But let's talk about those problems. So, and that's why I'm glad we have a group like this, that we can do that, without anybody, hopefully without anybody getting offended and leaving. We want this to be a free and open discussion.
Oh, I just, Susan asked what was wrong with the movie. She didn't get what that was. It was basically, we were just talking about how sexualized movies were at this time. It was all about what the men thought a desirable woman should be. So that's kind of where the conversation.
Can I answer that? Can I answer that question?
Certainly.
Sure.
I didn't see in this movie that was the case.
Mm.
I don't get where all this is coming from, other than it's on people's minds. But getting back to the comment about the production code, there was all kinds of double and triple entendres in this movie.
Oh yeah.
And I think it was Billy Wilder playing around with us. I mean, it was really cool. Yeah. But the one that really struck me was that when she got done with Yum Yum, which was a great double entendre. Did you notice that she was sharpening the pencil?
Yes.
And given that little look on her face, like, anyway, I thought that was really awesome.
Yeah, some of those things look kind of fun. Thanks, Susan. All right. Anybody else? Oh, Ronald? You have to unmute.
Yeah, Ronald, you're still muted.
Yep.
There you go.
Yeah, the issue is not really sexism. The issue is power. I mean, women had no power in those days. Hollywood was run by men. The entire industry was owned and run by men. How many female producers were there? How many female directors were there? You know who the only female director in Hollywood was? There was one female director.
Ida Lupino.
Ida Lupino. And she was, and her films really stand out for that reason. And she made movies in the same way that men make movies, because the code of filmmaking required movies to be made in a certain way. So if you're going to put women in that position, that anyway, my point had to do more with power and with the kind of narratives that are presented through an act of power. And women never get to see the male body in movies. Name one movie where a woman is looking at a man's body, whereas we see a million times women being ogled by men.
Gentlemen prefer blondes. It was a Howard Hawks movie too.
Yeah. I can think of several with Robert Mitchum with the shirt off, Clark Gable with the shirt off. I think, your point is taken.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, it's a rarity that happens when we're actually asked to look at a male body from a woman's point of view. That's a rare event. Whereas in most movies, that's sort of presented as a given that men look at the woman's body.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm even talking about the naked body. And in one of the last episodes of the city, those girls from New York City, what was the name of that?
Sex in the City?
The Sex in the City. Samantha's watching this guy taking a shower, and she's looking at him. And contrast that with a scene from Hollywood Boulevard. With William Holden? What was his name? Boulevard.
Sunset Boulevard.
Sunset Boulevard.
Where she never looks at the male's body. There's a scene where William Holden is coming out of the swimming pool, and you could very easily have had a point of view shot of her looking at the man that she owns from her point of view. She owns this guy, and she never looks at his body. Had it been the other way around, we would have gotten a close-up of the bikini, the camera going up the legs, the torso, the breast, the hair, the entire panorama of the female body would have been presented. But
Ronald, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, I hope you're going to join us on April the 16th, because we're going to talk about Joan Harrison, one of the most influential women producers in Hollywood. I think you'll really, really enjoy that program. We're going to have the author of a book on Joan Harrison, Christina Lane, is going to join us for that. And so I really think you would enjoy that quite a bit. So I hope you'll join us for that.
I'm going to go way off script here, but I just kind of realized Billy Wilder brought this script with him from Germany, which explains why I thought a lot of not the slang words that Sugarpuss was saying, but a lot of the words that Joe Lilac was saying sounded like Yiddishisms to me. They were probably German, but of course the two languages are so similar. When he was talking about somebody being a schmata, that's a rag. A person would be a person who has no spine, and I thought, oh, that's an odd word to throw in there, but I'm thinking it's more German than Yiddish. And
yeah, definitely.
A few minutes ago, and I apologize for derailing whatever the conversation.
No, you're fine.
no, that's okay.
Epiphany.
And that's a great point, because Wilder wrote that, years previously, and adapted that story for this. So yeah, there's lots of remnants of that still hanging around.
I think that's how he sold it too. Like they sold it as it's just another version of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Right? Ethan, you had your hand up?
Yeah, as important as I think this conversation is about the male gaze and old Hollywood versus what it is now, I believe that should be talked about very, very much so. And you all are wonderful for bringing it up. But I want to just build off of what my dad said about the slang. No, not like negating any of the stuff that we had just talked about. What do you, Dad, you just said about the slang, about the Yiddishisms.
Like the schmata and the...
and Memenkis or something like that. You said something else too.
Yeah, McKinkies.
Yeah.
What I don't quite understand about this movie yet, I'm trying to figure it out in a good way, is how 70% of the dialogue is so unbelievably dated, so stuck in the 40s. And I understood every word of it, and it was hysterical, and it was completely timeless. It's
Yeah,
so distinctly 1940s in every word that they're saying, especially, what is it, smackaroos? I
Mhm.
burst into laughter when he said smackaroos. But I understood instantly that he meant dollar, and I understood what most of the 40s slang meant. And I guess that's just some kind of magical thing. That wasn't intentional for it to hold up, all those words to hold up nowadays.
I think
I just
that's
wanted to say that really, really worked.
I think that's sort of the beauty of slang in that it always has some sort of, it always has a strong link to a common term, phrase, feeling, meaning. It's just a different spin on it, whether it's slang from the 40s, some of which has stayed around and has some staying power, and a lot of it falls by the wayside. But to what we hear in modern slang, I taught high school for years, and one thing I loved about teaching high school was that kept me in touch with what that the I guess the gestalt of that age group, right? Not so much a time period, but that capsule of people. What was a common phrase, and at one point during the year, I said something was really groovy, and I got these little side. this was like early '90s, and I said groovy. It's a real word, and they're like, yeah. I said, it's not like gear or anything like that. I said, don't be such an L7. It's a real word. And then we had a lot of fun with it. But yeah, I think slang does that. Even as slang changes, the thing that it's the concept or the word that it's linking to is still a viable word, and we all know what that means.
You're right.
Yeah.
I do think that you're absolutely right. But the reason why this stuck with me, and this is the last I'm going to say on it, is that if this movie was made, what is it, 2021? If this movie was made 8 years ago, in around 2013, and I heard any of those characters say anything about doing the whip nay nay or dabbing on the haters, I would just be instantly turned off. So it's interesting how this slang holds up.
Yeah,
It's interesting
there's a
too.
classicness to it. You're right.
Yeah,
It
I wonder
is.
if that's because you didn't live through it.
Maybe something like that.
That
It
might
could be, could be.
Or
And you know,
don't know.
I think too, we also have to understand that nobody when they made this film thought anybody was going to be watching it 70, 80 years later. Nobody thought that was
This
going
is
to
true.
happen. These were just made for it would go through a year's distribution, and not even, it was years later before this stuff showed up on TV.
So pop culture piece.
Exactly.
Definitely.
So
Yeah.
the fact that we can watch this film today, and Ethan, you as a young guy, and still enjoy the film is a testament to the filmmaking, the writing.
The writing, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, even the slang we don't understand, it's still funny and we still get it. And so it's such a tremendous film.
Yes, so much staying power with
It does.
I think Debbie's point earlier about how it was, the smart guys using their brains and their books to outsmart the gangsters. I think that's one of the reasons why I think it works too, is because the language, it's about the language, right? That whole scene about corn and what does corn mean, and corny, and well, corny could be this, but this could also be this. Those different things and the iterations of the language itself, I think, is what makes this movie very interesting in that way. And the fact that, someone can say, get that book and that page and read the first line, and that's going to give you the clue to be able to, pull the rug out from under the gangster, that intelligence was great. Bill B, you had something?
Yeah, I totally agree. The power of the writing and the language in this, and just doubling back a little bit to the strength of the story and how good a structuralist Billy Wilder was I thought one thing that was really clever and classic about the way they did the scene where they burned the rope to have the picture fall down. They played on each of their background strengths. This is geography, science, math, history, and they found a way to incorporate all that, and they did it in sort of a seamless way. And that strikes me as very Billy Wilder. And it had his trademark cynicism, but it also had this ability to just take all of these disparate parts and put them together to make the story stronger.
Yeah,
absolutely. Oh, and one other quick thing, and I hope maybe somebody can think of it, but that one shot where you saw the Barbara Stanwyck close the door of her bungalow and the 9 becomes a 6. I think that's been used in 6 or 7 movies since then. And I was trying to think, which ones have I seen that in? But I wonder if that was the first time they used that device. But it, again, very clever structurally what they did there.
Yeah, very much so.
And who walks into somebody's bungalow without waiting to hear?
Right.
Right. Yeah. Right. It's strange, but it still worked. Yeah.
Yeah. Logic is not always the strongest point in a screwball comedy, but yeah, that's a great moment. Well, let me ask you guys another question, and this is kind of something playing off what Jan had said earlier. Now, imagine you're going to see this movie when it premiered in December 1941, but it wasn't in wide release until New Year's Day 1942 in most places. So Pearl Harbor had just happened a few weeks earlier. War was on everybody's mind. In fact, if you do a Google search on December 1941 in American history and look at each day, I challenge you to find anything news item related that's not about the war. So to say a movie like Ball of Fire was a welcome diversion is a huge understatement. But what do you think? Maybe the audiences then felt kind of like Jan did this week. What do you think the audience reaction was when they saw this film?
Anyone? Bill?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. As a matter of fact, I did some of the reading I did on this was that it was a huge box office hit. And I think part of that was because it was a really good film, but part of that might have been, I think it might be right on the money there, that people needed a diversion with all of the really horrible news going on at the time in the news.
Yeah, definitely. Who else had their hand up? Oh, but Bruce, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I wasn't there in 1941, but I would think that anytime we have something very emotional happening, whether it was things that I remember distinctly, I don't distinctly remember Bobby Kennedy being assassinated, but Challenger explosion, 9/11, things of that nature. It casts this power over the whole world, I guess, or over your psyche. That if you do see something good, you question your reaction to it. So I'm wondering if people walked out of that movie theater saying, "Wow, I really liked it, but given the events of the past couple weeks, I don't know if I'm allowed to like it or to say I like it." But then to hear that it was a box office hit, either I'm totally off base here, or if there was this sort of underground or maybe even just understood, hey, if you want a fluff piece that's enjoyable, go watch this movie. Or, I'll tell friends, hey, listen, if you do need to get away, this is a great piece. If quarantine is just beating the heck out of you, Jan, then this is a great to watch. And I like I said, I liked it. I enjoyed it. I didn't think of it as much more than a fluff film, as an enjoyable film. It didn't speak to any deep purpose or what have you. It didn't say anything about the nature of humanity or whatever. The weird stuff that Ethan will tell you I like. But,
like Tiger King?
Like that was so highly recommended. My wife and I watched one episode and I was like, nope, nah, I got nothing for this. But I wonder if that might have been playing in there as well.
Jan, did you have your hand up? Yeah, okay. Sorry.
I'm happy to be the poster child for pandemic. What's the
Pandemic
word? I
relief.
heard it this week. Fatigue.
Yeah,
Pandemic.
pandemic fatigue.
You know, I think we're all aware of what's going on. I think you view it psychologically helpful for 2 hours be able to escape into a crazy world with 7 professors running around or whatever. So I'm sure for a lot of people back then, terrible times it must have been, that they could escape in a large movie house. They weren't seeing it streaming from their living room and be with other people and maybe all laughing at the same time. So it probably was a good release. Also, I do remember then on the feminine side of things, hearing my grandmother say how she loved seeing movies like this because you could see women in these elaborate fashions that weren't really out there for the average woman.
Right.
And one thing in particular, I remember saying, now this might have become a little bit later in the 40s, women couldn't get nylon stockings. So remember there's scenes from movies where they were drawing a line up the back of their leg to make it look like that. So to see her kind of peel off this stocking like it was nothing, was probably something for women in those days. But I do remember my grandmother in particular saying how much she used to love going to movies and seeing the jewelry and the outfits because that wasn't really her life back then. And so it was a nice diversion. I hope they were able to view it that way.
Yeah. Bernadette?
Well, I had somewhat of an experience. I did comment this in the chat. The night before I saw The Mauritanian. I don't know, it's a new movie out and it is a true story about the Guantanamo Bay detainees. That was Wednesday night. After that, I said, I'll watch another movie only if it's light. And this did the trick. So I leveled myself out, but I can see how this, it worked for me. And I wasn't even, it was just because that was a true story. It had such an impact on me and it happened in my lifetime. So put that into the context of, sitting in a movie theater after having, Pearl Harbor happen, maybe the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very true.
Great.
Bill Snyder?
So after hearing everybody talking about how much we all have loved this movie, it makes me wonder why this group doesn't watch more movies like this instead of some of the ones that we haven't all liked over the last couple of months.
Ooh. Bill, sticking it right in and twisting it right there.
As we go from Thunder Road to Ball of Fire to Ashes, yeah.
Yeah, Ashes and Diamonds might not be the feel-good movie for everyone. Yeah, no, Bill, that's a great point. And yeah, I try to mix it up, and I try to do some stuff like this and Miracle at Morgan's Creek and things like that, but also try to put some other stuff in there because nobody wants the same thing all the time, do they?
Well, we started this in the beginning in March as a let's play some light things, let's have some good uplifting movies and things that had a nice spin on it. And then Andy asked, okay, so are we ready for some other types of things? And everybody was like, yeah, I think we're good for that. We're good for that. It sounds like maybe in the anniversary of this
right, which is coming up. Our 1 year anniversary is coming up.
Our 1 year anniversary is coming up. We might need to go back to the light stuff again.
And two, that's also one of the reasons I opened back up the audience choice movies. So in the audience choice movies, if you pick something dark, that's on you guys.
On you. Oh yeah, no, you know what, Susan, we're all geezers in our own right. There's really no, sometimes these modern movies are a little bit too much. Sometimes these older movies are a little bit too much for all of us. So yeah, you're welcome here.
All right, well, it's a little bit after 8, so unless does anybody else have any other quick comments?
Okay, Ronald and Bruce, real quick. You have to unmute. Nope, you're still muted.
Yeah, okay. Just something very quick. I love this movie. I've seen it 1,000 times. I don't want to give the impression that I love it, even though I think has many flaws. It's brilliantly done. I see it more as an American version of The Blue Angel, because you have the same sort of setup with this beautiful woman seducing the professor and sort of falling apart in the process of doing it. This is a kind of comedic version of that same narrative. And I think
Good
Billy
point.
Wilder would have known that film because that was done in Germany.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
he would have. Yeah.
anyway, yeah, I thought it was, I love this movie. I kind of get the impression I love all movies.
No, I'm
No,
glad.
no,
I'm
we
glad
didn't
you
get that impression. No, you get a good point.
And we hope, Ronald, it's been great to have you, and we hope you'll join us again.
I even loved Lenny Riefenstahl.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bruce.
I don't remember the professor's line, but there was one little piece of writing in the movie that really, really caught my attention. I really liked it. And actually no one's mentioned it this evening. When the professor said something to Sugarpuss that it was really cool or groovy or gear or whatever it was that he said. And she responded with, she found it illuminating. And just how that he had used a slang term that he had just picked up on. He was changing. He was Danny becoming Sandy there for a moment. And her Sandy was becoming his Danny with the illuminating.
That's hilarious.
I thought that was a very interesting line to throw in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And the great thing about this movie is you can go back and watch it and miss some of the slang that you missed the first time or the second time or the third time. Very, very much a rewatchable movie. Yeah. Well, I have some recommendations for you, and all of my recommendations are on Canopy. So if you missed our discussion several months back, you must see another Howard Hawks screwball comedy, His Girl Friday, with Cary Grant and Rosalind Russell, and some of the fastest dialogue you will ever hear in a movie. The library also has that one on DVD. Well, if you want more Cooper and Stanwyck, you're in luck. About 6 months before they made Ball of Fire, they made Meet John Doe, where Stanwyck plays a reporter writing a fictitious story about a John Doe who plans to kill himself over America's indifference to the plight of the common man. And Cooper plays the homeless man hired to become John Doe for a series of politically driven radio broadcasts. So here's another terrific movie with another terrific cast in addition to Cooper and Stanwyck, loaded with great talent in that movie. There's also Nothing Sacred from 1937, another screwball comedy, but this one in color, with Carol Lombard as a woman who believes she's dying from radium poisoning, finds out she's not, but decides to act like she is dying when a reporter, played by Frederick March, wants to do a story about a woman bravely facing terminal illness. It's a good one. And finally, if you'd like to see a musical remake of Ball of Fire, and Darnice alluded to this earlier, look no further than A Song is Born, featuring a group of music professors headlined by Danny Kaye and Benny Goodman. These guys, of course, are attempting to write a music encyclopedia, and they get involved with a club singer named Honey Swanson, played by Virginia Mayo. Honey is running from the police because her gangster boyfriend, well, you know the rest. In addition to Benny Goodman, the film also stars musicians Louis Armstrong, Tommy Dorsey, Lionel Hampton, Louis Bellson, and many others. So that is going to do it for tonight. Thank you all so much for joining me. And I hope to see you next Wednesday for our Future of Music and Musicians program, and on the 19th for Ashes and Diamonds. So everybody
Vanessa had her
take care.
hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Vanessa had her hand up.
Vanessa, yeah.
No, that was me applauding. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, thank you for the applause.
Thank you.
Well, everybody take care, be safe, and watch some great movies.
Good night.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful as always.
Thank you, Ethan. Thanks for joining
Very
us.
good.
Yeah.
And Bruce, thank
Thanks.
you. Everybody, great to see you.
As always.
Miriam, thank you so much.
Bye.
Kim, good to see you as always.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
See you
everybody.
again.